Thank you.
Okay, and you wanted me to start us off? Um,
Yes.
Hi, should we introduce ourselves this week? I'm Ananda Scott. I've been on this PTA. My daughter is in eighth grade, and since she was starting kindergarten, so however many years that is, and um, I do a lot of parent advocacy and parent partnership in IEP meetings, and I am also now special education teacher. Um, and so. Just But I think we don't, can we just introduce ourselves as we have our first slide? Um, this presentation is just sort of, we were talking about, there are lots of IEP trainings out there where you learn about kind of the law behind the different sections. Um, we wanted to address all the little things that kind of put those pieces together that no one ever tells you and that you find out in odd ways along the way that we wish we knew from the beginning. So that's what we're sharing tonight. A couple of housekeeping things. If you, we're going to hold questions at the end, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and conversation at the end. But if you want to put questions in the chat as you think of them as a way to hold on to them, that strongly recommend that. Um, I wanted to touch on language. So, person first, identity first, and person-centered language are terms you may have heard. Person first language is what is often recommended. That's where you put the person ahead of the identity. So you would say a person with autism instead of an autistic person. Um, identity first language comes from actually disabled people um, saying that that is a meaningful part of their identity, and it's preferable to some people to uh, not like to be autistic, to be disabled are not things to be ashamed of or embarrassed of, and they have a big impact on your life. And so they're an important part of identity, and that we should be comfortable speaking that way. And so I always address that because you may hear some of us using identity first language, and if you don't have context for that, it can be misinterpreted as offensive language when in fact it's listening to disabled people. And then the person-centered language kind of gets at people's comfort level with the two different approaches and really just boils down to on an individual level, you address people the way they are comfortable being addressed. You use the language they would prefer you use about their disability. So we try to honor that um, when we're, in a situation to be able to ask that or know that. The last thing I wanted to touch on is inclusive values. So I just want to the Shoreline Special Education PTSA's mission and vision. Our mission is to build community within and between student groups, caregivers, and staff, and to advocate for special education students and for equitable, inclusive education for all. And our vision also addresses, we envision a shoreline school district community where every child is valid and it is valued and authentically included. And I just wanted to share that because that value of inclusion and inclusivity influences what we felt like are important tips to share in the way we speak about them. So I just wanted to put that up front. And I think with that, we can get started. Jen,
Yeah, okay, hold on. There's something going on with the video, but I don't know if I can fix it. Um, let's see. Never idea. Okay. Genevieve?
Hi everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Great, great. So my slide, never IEP alone. So this one is personal to me. I'll just start with a background, personal experience. It's really important that I joined the PTA and been a part of the community. I have a 4-year-old daughter with autism, and she has 2 older sisters who are not on the autism spectrum. So this was a completely new experience to myself and my family. We're also new to the city of Seattle, newer. So we don't have any family nearby or close friends. So I kind of felt like we were navigating this whole kind of new experience on my own. And I just want to say that finding other parents who understand the process and people that I can, talk to and ask questions and learn from has really made a huge difference in my personal experience. It's reminded me that no one has to become an expert overnight, and we don't have to do this alone. I do want to also talk about like reaching out to your community. So as a group, whether that's a PTA or other groups of, parents or anyone in your community, just reach out, and it's a way for people to support each other. And then I do want to mention also as well that you are able to bring someone with you to IEP meetings. Many parents don't realize, but you are allowed to bring people with you. This could be another parent, a friend, a family member, an advocate, or someone from the PTSA community. So just having another person there can help you take notes, process information, make you feel supported. And sometimes it can be kind of emotional or overwhelming conversations. So just having an advocate or someone there with you to make you feel supported makes a huge difference. So I just wanted to touch on the importance of having a community. And then also to let you know that you don't have to, as our slide says, IEP alone, that there are people there that can help you. We're willing to help you. And then just if you have questions as well outside of an IEP meeting, you can always bring it up to us. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Genevieve. Okay, I think I'm next. Here we go. Related services support access to education. So a common concern is that related services such as OT, PT, and speech don't address all the concerns that parents are seeing. And parents think that they should, or they can be frustrated when IEP teams don't address issues that they see at home, but teachers are saying we don't see that at school, and so they don't qualify for this particular service. And that is because IEPs are really about accessing the general education curriculum. And so it's not meant to fix issues that you see at home. Hopefully it will help if you get so if the child gets services at school, maybe it will help at home as well, but that's not really the purpose of it. It's really about school. So for this reason, your child may not qualify for a service at school that they might qualify for with an outside provider such as OT. So just remember, this is really school-based and not meant to solve everything. Ananda?
Talk about your child's needs, not what you want for your child. This is sort of a communication tip, but when you, especially when things are getting emotional or you're struggling to get what your child needs, I often hear people talking about, I want them to have this, I want them to have that, I want this for them. And just legally, also, we want to center the child. It's really about the kid, not about us. And obviously, when we talk about what we want for our kids, we're talking about them. But you just want to strike the word what you want from your language and talk about what your child needs. Because IEPs, there's a legal obligation to meet your child's needs to access their education. There's no legal education to do what you want for your child or what you would like or what you think is best. Their obligation is to meet their needs. So when you find yourself in that space and you're like, I want him to have this, I want him to have that, just like switch it to, she needs this, she needs that. It sounds small, but it's a big deal. Um, those were kind of like before we get started, like just general things to know. IEP meeting itself.
Sorry, I went too far.
Yes, sir. All right.
Okay. Um, you are an equal member of the team. So caregivers, a lot of us are told to bring treats, to act extra nice, bend over backwards, to make the team like you, and so that they'll do um, what you need them to do. Oops, sorry. Um, yes, you want to be kind and considerate, and you don't have to bend over backwards. You don't have to bring them treats. If you're the type of person that brings treats, maybe you might want to, but that's not everyone, and you don't need to. That's not a requirement. You can make suggestions in advance or ask to be part of the pre-draft planning. Recently, for an IEP meeting of one of my kids, so I have two on IEPs, and one of them just had their IEP meeting not too long ago. And I really appreciated when the resource room teacher, and case manager sent me their thoughts just in a Word document of these are the goals I'm thinking about. This is why this goal he's pretty much passed. This goal doesn't really make sense anymore. This one I think he really still needs, and maybe, maybe some new ones. And then I got to give him some feedback on, well, yeah, I agree with this one, or, I really think this one still needs to be done, or, maybe we can try this goal instead. And then we talked about it at the meeting, and they said, well, we agree with what you said on this, but not this. And so we could it's kind of was a negotiation a little bit, although we were kind of on the same page anyway, but it can turn into a little bit of a negotiation. It was very positive. But I also knew what was coming in advance. So I appreciated that. A couple of other notes about IEP meetings is you don't have to have just one meeting and be done. If you need to take a break and come back to a different meeting, if you need to, yeah, basically if you need to take a break for whatever reason, if you need to find out more information, if you need to get someone to help you, or if you just don't agree, or whatever, you can ask for another meeting. You also have the right to speak up. Come prepared to the meeting, track your child's progress, and note any areas that they may need help. So again, provide feedback, and speak up if you think something's not right, or if they need X help instead of Y help, or anything like that. That you are an equal member of the team. And then we're on to Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Lawton, and I have a freshman in high school who's been on an IEP with the Shoreline District since he was 3. I also grew up in this city and went to these schools, and I also had an IEP as a student. So, emotions are okay. The biggest thing I was told before I started this process was that it wasn't appropriate for parents to show emotions. That you kind of had to, this was a business meeting, so it needed to be about business. However, the business that we're talking about is my most precious thing to me in the entire world. And I start talking about my child's struggles or things like that, and I get emotional, and that's okay. I often warn IEP teams, hey, I'm probably gonna cry, and that's fine. I'm okay. I just have some Kleenex with me. And it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to ask for clarification because you're confused or whatever it is. The only issue is that anger is not conducive to group work. So if you need to take a break because either your emotions are getting to you or it's contentious and you're getting angry, it's okay to say, you know what, I don't think that we're going to be able to move forward today, and I need to take a break and call the meeting then because of emotions. That's perfectly okay and acceptable.
All righty. So you want to having a vision. So I said earlier to not to strike what my kid wants from your language and talk about their needs. But this is this is about your vision for well, if with a very young child, as the child gets older, you're wanting to incorporate them and sharing their idea and their vision for themselves and their future. But it's about your family's values. It's about the future you envision for your child. Um, you want to know those things coming in, and there are templates out there. There's Pinteresty things you can do, sort of a vision thing, which is great. Um, but I, but my point is not that you have to go create that. Um, but the point of an IEP, the point of school, is to prepare children for life as adults. And when we're getting in the weeds about this particular need that we're seeing at this moment in time, it's easy to lose sight of that. And it's easy to go down a path with unintended consequences because we're not thinking long term. So it's just helpful, like just as an example, I don't know if my daughter will want to my daughter has Down syndrome. So if there are college programs for people with intellectual disability. I don't know if she's going to want to do something like that. They're also pretty competitive and there aren't enough of them, so it's not easy to necessarily get into. So I don't want to make that decision for her in kindergarten, but I also didn't want to make decisions in kindergarten that could close that door for her because we'd already taken her down a path where um, where she'd be less likely to be accepted into a program like that or be less comfortable navigating a general education environment and working with um, non-disabled peers in a way that would support her being more comfortable and more likely to be interested in going to a college program, right? So having those ideas about your beliefs and your values and your vision for your child can make you see those local level decisions you're making today in a different light. And that's important because, like I said, the point of all of this is to raise up an adult. So,
And I'll just add to that, having the vision and values helps you have clarity on the future and
oh,
also
this is me too. Oh, do you want to add? Yeah.
just this one part, and it will help you decide what's really important right now. So is having OT super important right now, or is it having pull out OT, or has it pushing OT or having OT at all? Um, anyway, that's just it helps you think about things like that.
Like, I think the way you were talking about it before was like in that negotiation of an IEP, it helps you have clarity on what are the things, what are the hills you're absolutely going to die on and that are not, you are not flexible on, and what things can you let go. Right? And if you said that, Jen, I apologize because it kind of cut out a little bit on me, which might be a me thing, not a.
No, I think it was a me thing. It's fine. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, this is you, Nanda.
So discuss placement last. So oftentimes, so the IEP is a big old complicated thing, and especially as you're new to it, there's a lot to wrap your brain around with all the sections. But we tend to have real clarity on whether where we want our kid placed. If you're coming from in an inclusive placement, we're talking about like general education classroom. And historically, and in a lot of places, even currently, schools are resistant to putting kids with significant support needs in general education classrooms. And so oftentimes parents are coming into meetings with that goal and with a lot of anxiety about it. And so there's this tendency to want to center the discussion around placement. But the IEP goes in order and everything builds on the last. So the evaluation is you want the evaluation, everything that comes after is built on that. So your evaluation, you want to be thinking about what kind of picture, it's not just about eligibility and whether you've checked those boxes. What kind of picture does it paint of your child? Does it have things in their strengths and um, strategies that help them access their education that are going to support later parts of the IEP? And you don't have to do those things at the same time. You don't have to have your evaluation and your IEP meeting at the same time. You shouldn't. Um, so make sure that is correct and a good picture of your kid before you move on to the next. And then you have present levels, which are super important because the goals are going to be based on them. So it isn't just, oh, is this accurate? It's what does this mean for what my kid's going to work on? And then when you get to goals, if you're thinking about they should be based on the evaluation and the present levels, and then what does it look like to work on that goal in a school? And is that going to help or hinder access to general education? Is it something they can work on in a general education classroom? Does it align with what other kids are doing? If all those pieces are in order, and then accommodations are where, again, based back on the evaluation, the accommodation should list all those things that help that kid be successful. So in accessing their education. So then when you get to placement, it's the very, very, very end of the IEP, and it shouldn't have to be a negotiation because the IEP has now built something that clearly sort of indicates a particular setting. And so that's why it's last. And if you have strong feelings about placement, understanding how those pieces build on each other and being focused on that from the very beginning is how you result with the placement that you envision for your child. Um,
Aaron.
all right, evaluations, Aaron.
Me. So evaluations. There is a timeline for evaluations once the process starts, but you can ask for an evaluation at any time. And one thing we forget because maybe we're at pickup or drop off, we talk about it, but like always put it in writing because it doesn't count. Nothing counts unless it's written down. And so if you at Kinderfest, apparently this came up quite a bit. And so if you decided at one point that you didn't want to evaluate, need to evaluate, refuse services for any reason, but now you think your child might need those services, you can request for an evaluation or reevaluation. The evaluations are always valid for 3 years, but kids do a whole lot of growth sometimes, and it needs to be relooked at. Oftentimes we've had some stronger teams than others who anticipated those needs and like got the ball rolling a little bit sooner, or and then we did a couple right in a row for big changes from like elementary to middle. Oh, and by the way, I'm Erin Atchison. I have 3 sons in Shoreline, a 9th grader, 8th grader, and a 6th grader, and one of my kids is on an IEP. And so I've been in and around this a lot. And I also have been a general education teacher at high school in Washington for 21 years. And so I'm speaking from both of these hats. Anyway, we're all passionate about this. So there's that. Yeah, and you don't have to wait to request a reevaluation or an evaluation at any point. And I think, is that?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. In writing. I know this, and I did not do this for too long.
We all know it, and we've all
Too
not
many
done
times.
it. Write it down. Ask for writing, and then also your own conversations, thoughts, and those that are like write it down. Write down what happened in face-to-face interactions. Yeah. Anyway.
Same.
Disability alone does not qualify for an evaluation. So a common misconception is that if a kid has a disability, so if you get a diagnosis from a doctor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist or something, that automatically means that now the school needs to evaluate and provide services. But they do not have to, the school district does not have to evaluate unless there is evidence or concern that the disability adversely impacts the educational performance and it requires specially designed instruction to access the curriculum. There is no flow chart that the district has that says if you have XYZ diagnosis, then you get ABC interventions. Everything that's the I part in the IEP is the individualized. So if you have a student that has a recent diagnosis of ADHD or dysgraphia, but they are currently not exhibiting any signs of being behind or it having impacting in their learning, then there does not need to be an evaluation and specially designed instruction is not required.
I'm just going to add on to that. If they're doing okay in school because you're up till midnight every night with tears and hair pulling, getting stuff done to keep them afloat, stop. Because that's not fair to you and it's not fair to your kid. And then it's giving school false information about the impact their disability is having on their education. If you are trying to get that evaluation and get those services, but you're hiding the impact by making that by having things be really difficult at home, that you don't need to do that. And anyway, I'm moving on.
Yes, what Ananda said.
Purpose of evaluations. Just like to always bring this up because there's such a strong focus on the evaluation determining eligibility, right? If you want an IEP or if the district is looking at getting an IEP for your child, they have to meet certain criteria to be able to provide that. So evaluations are often super deficit based because they're trying to like look at all these problems so that you qualify. And often, way too often, that's all that gets talked about. But that is not the only, and this is the law. We put the actual the WAC, the Washington Code, on here. Determining eligibility is not the only legal requirement of evaluations. They are also, as I mentioned earlier, in that order of operations, they are the basis that's going to support the IEP development, and they are supposed to provide information. And I've got it, it's bold typed here in the law. But they're supposed to, the evaluation should result in information related to enabling the student to be involved in and make progress in the general education curriculum. So that sort of data should be in there, and it's important because that's what's going to give you a more complete picture in your present levels and build accommodations that are actually going to support and help your child. So just I mentioned earlier in that order of operations process about making sure that evaluation paints the full picture that you need to paint before you move on to the next section. This is part of what I was getting at. It shouldn't just be deficits. It should also be what's going to support your child in enabling them to be involved in and make progress in general education curriculum. Goals. Aaron.
So, with my general educator hat on, our gen ed teacher, at least one gen ed teacher is required to be at the IEP meeting for the entire time. As you get older and your students have more gen ed teachers, some schools I've been at have had different policies where they only have one gen ed teacher, and it may or may not be a teacher that your child has, which doesn't feel good. As the teacher or as a family where that's happening. But they're there and they often we don't tend to get enough training in this. It's all very theoretical. And so they often don't know what to do in the meeting or feel like they can't contribute. And some of us will butt right in, but a lot of times you can be the one to ask, with the gen ed teacher that's there. You can request that your child's actual teachers are there. That matters and gets results. Um, if you happen to be at a school, I don't think any of the Shoreline schools do this, but if you happen to be at a school where those assign someone to clearly check that legal box, um, ask for something different, and that should happen. But regardless of your child's placement, whether they're in self-contained or in a more inclusive setting, you can invite the gen ed teachers to the discussion. Questions like, what are like typical on grade level students doing? What are they expected to be doing? What could that look like for your child? Sometimes that seems like difficult and daunting if students have significant support needs. But the overarching goal of like, what is the point of fourth grade or whatever? Like, what do we want kids to be able to know and be able to do by the time they're done? And then how do we help our student access those skills or demonstrate those skills is the whole point of all of this. And so one way that I've found to tap into some of the gen ed teachers' expertise and then maybe get them to be in some conversations with the special education staff is to use language around power standards. And basically those are like the most essential learning standards, the critical knowledge and skills that we want students to be able to know and be able to do by the time they're done with whatever that course is. And so it really gets at most of our assignments are measuring dozens of skills all at once. Task initiation, finishing a task when you get like sorry, I'm like totally brain fried from today. When you hit an obstacle, being able to ask questions, holding a pencil, writing, knowing how to spell, like any of those things, reading comprehension, memory. And so thinking about like what's really the point of any of these assignments and how do we get that point so that this student, regardless of their support needs, is able to do that big thing. And so it can reduce like the task demand of a lot of tasks. So they're not like often like doing an entire worksheet is not really the whole point of the assignment, but being able to add some numbers, even with tools, like that would be the point. In upper grades, one of the really common accommodations that get added to 504s and IEPs is to like shorten assignments or reduce assignments. And that's only helpful if the assignment is being reduced to that like main goal and main point, because then our students are getting the same learning and demonstrating the same learning as typical students, but maybe just less in a different way. And to reiterate again what Ananda said about mentioning how much work is going on at home behind the scenes to help students stay caught up in class. Gen ed teachers, we often don't see that or notice that. And we see students struggling in class, but then don't know they're also still going home and working on their math or their science for hours or doing lots of homework every night. And they seem fine, like they understand. But if that's going on, just also keep bringing that up, that they're using their class time, they're not goofing around in class, and they're still doing lots of stuff outside of class, and it's too much. Like we should be able to reduce some of that load. What else? Anyway, it's been fun to think about this. Like, what is the actual point of this assignment? And then what are the myriad ways that we can creatively problem solve how to get students to be able to demonstrate that knowledge. And it's very universal designy, but not all of us are great at writing. We can practice those skills, but maybe we can talk about it and open up our gen ed classes too to allowing more students different choice and voice and expression of learning. But those are some buzzwords that might work. Like, can we shorten task demand to just the most essential standards?
Can I piggyback and add something on there? Um,
Yeah.
there is a phrase that one hears a lot. Now, I'm having one of those moments like this was like stuff we wish we knew from the beginning. And I don't know if this is one of those things that's actually out there everywhere or if it's one of those things that you learn later. But there's this idea, well, fact, the general education teacher is the content experts. The special education teacher is supporting their access to that content. But if you're sitting in a fourth grade IEP meeting, the fourth grade general education teacher is the one who really knows what fourth graders need to learn and what the inside of that fourth grade classroom looks like. So if you can get them talking about what that looks like and what they're working on, you can shift a conversation from a deficit-based, here's all the things my kid can't do that they have IEP goals for, that the special education teacher is going to work on them with them on, or whatever that looks like. And it doesn't have to be the special education teacher working on that, but that's a whole other conversation. Having the general education teacher come in and just talk about what class looks like and what that grade band works on can shift that conversation from that deficit basis to, oh, here's what we need to learn. Here's where we're going. What can that look like for my kid? And it can really just change the tone of the IEP meeting and opens up the door to all um those core concepts that Aaron was talking about then. Anyway.
Okay, supports is are we good? Accommodations are not dependent on service minutes. This is one that was really big for me to learn. One of my kids, as I was mentioning earlier, so my kid qualifies for OT outside of school, but not inside of school, but he still needs some supports in school. So he's able to get a slant board and erasable pens and other writing supplies that support his OT needs, but he's not getting time with an OT every week. And that was, again, one of those things that we discussed, that I realized wasn't my hill to die on. As long as he was getting the support at school, that's what he needed. And I was fine with him not getting the time each week. So basically, you can get all the accommodations. Well, I don't know about all, but you can get a lot of accommodations that the child needs without necessarily getting the time with the specialist, like the OT or PT or speech therapist. So just keep that in mind. I think that makes sense. Next. And moving on.
Placement. And that's me. So there's a common misconception that's probably rooted in a lot of ableism that your students have to be ready to be in general education to be placed in a general education class. And what we need to come back to all the time is that special education services are not location based. Like there's the services and supports are portable. They are tied to your child, your student, and not the placement and not a specific particular room. It's the responsibility of the school and the classroom to be ready for our students and not the other way around. And too often students trying to move from self-contained into gen ed have to prove that they're like fixed before they're able to get in. And that's not true and rooted in a lot of incorrect thinking about humans And like none of us are really ready. That's the whole point of school. Like we're supposed to get ready together. And so like Ananda said, where placement discussions are should be towards the end after all the needs, but you can push back on pull out services a lot. Pushing in services are great for all the kids too. So if there's a way to get minutes or services in the gen ed classroom, like that's perfectly reasonable to request and to expect because the services are not location dependent. There are all kinds of places in which you can get speech services.
Um, yeah, a child is legally entitled to receive services in their home school. Um, this is important because it's a pretty common practice in our region to have this, oh, this program is at that school. We serve this need over there. And you have this uh, the under IDEA, a child with a disability has the right to attend the school they would attend if they did not have a disability. It's part of the least restrictive environment requirement. It relates to what Erin was just talking about, that services are portable. So um, the idea that, oh, well, we don't do that here because we do it somewhere else isn't really like if your kid has support needs, those should be provided in their homeschool. Not being willing to or currently just not already doing it is not the same as, oh, that would literally be impossible to do. And it's not a valid reason to deny it. Your kid has a legal right to receive their supports in their homeschool.
Okay. So after the IEP meeting, if there is still concerns or questions that you have and you don't feel somebody at the school can answer them, don't hesitate to go up the chain. If you have talked to the principal and if you talk to your IEP team and it's just something's just not right, we have a really responsive student services team, and I really actually mean that. They have helped me with a couple of situations. Um, and we meaning the special education PTSA can help get you in touch with them. Their contact information is on the on the school district website. If you don't know if you should contact them or who to contact, feel free to reach out to the PTA and we'll talk to you and we'll maybe you don't need to contact them, but I advise you to do it if you have concerns. So just know that they are a resource and there's more resources above them, but I would start with our student services team. They are really fantastic.
And you're not going to alienate your school team, especially if you're asking for things that are um, different than what's commonly done, or and the school team isn't certain what's possible. Um, that student services team becomes a support for them as well.
Absolutely.
And they're often budget authority for a different set of resources, and they have like a bigger picture view of what's available in the district and stuff. And often they tend to be more responsive to parents than staff. Not that they're going to ignore staff, but it hits different when parents are helping to request things. And so we school teams often encourage that if that, and we may not say it out loud in a meeting, but it helps get the ball rolling and might help additional students and teachers and classrooms in the future, because that could be a thing that would be really helpful to lots of other places that nobody had asked for yet. So speaking of
Don't be
asking for
shy.
things, yeah,
If you're stuck, bring them in.
yeah. And speaking of asking for things, you can ask for an IEP meeting at any time. The year annual meeting is a minimum requirement, and it's not a maximum at all. If something needs to be changed, if you have concerns, if you have questions, if you're just wondering what's going on, you can request a meeting in writing. And you don't even, it doesn't even have to be a formal IEP meeting. You can just request a meeting at, like, I'm most familiar with high school, so you can request a meeting through the case manager or the counselor or any of the teachers and bring people together to say, like, maybe there's not enough of an issue for a full IEP meeting or a full re-evaluation or anything, but like you got concerns. And especially as students get older, it feels um, like parents and families are less likely to reach out, and maybe they feel like they shouldn't, but like, yes, please, we want you to be as involved as you want to be. And we're a team, and it helps. It helps the student to know that we're all on the same team, there to support them. If there's reasons to celebrate too, like that's a great reason to have a meeting. Like things are going really well, and we want to sit around and brag about how well things are going too. That the support's working, like that's fantastic also. So, and sometimes too, our IEP meetings are at weird times of the year because of how the different timelines have fallen. So it's perfectly reasonable at semester changes and stuff or mid-year to bring the team back together and look again at data or goals. Um, anyway, it's an ongoing conversation.
Dun, 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 dun. So you're coming to the end of the IEP school journey. IEP provides support through age 22. That was changed, I want to say 2 years ago. Ish. It used to be 21, now it's 22. This does not mean extra time in high school. There is a entirely different service, usually referred to as the transition program, that is the transition between education, school, and what comes after. So they focus more on, depending on what you and the IEP team and the student at this point have decided to go for. They focus on job training, they focus on community navigation, they focus on oh my goodness, personal relationships, how to navigate through things like that. So they focus on essentially how to live and what to do after you leave the protection of high school, which is awesome and fantastic. Most of we have, I believe, two sites that Shoreline utilizes. I believe there's one at the Shoreline Community College and then one that operates out of the Shoreline Center. But yeah, it's at age, I want to say 16, and the crowd can jump in and tell me if I'm wrong. 16 is when legally your student is invited to the IEP. They can choose to come or not come, but I highly recommend starting to at a younger age, starting to incorporate them into the IEP process, because out of everyone, parents, staff, teachers, special education teachers, gen ed teachers, everyone, the person that is the most important is who the IEP is for, because they're the one that's going to have to live through all of the processes and deal with everyone that's doing it. So, dun, 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 dun. There you go.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so resources. We're just about to the end of this. We created a resources document that I will post on our website very shortly, probably in the next couple of days. We, as a PTA, are a resource for you. If you have questions, concerns, just anything that comes up, please let us know. The Arc of King County has a parent partner program where they match you with a parent that can help you talk about the IEP, maybe come to an IEP meeting. We will also, if we can, try to come to an IEP meeting as somebody from the PTA. So the Arc of King County Parent Partner Program is I think it's a great program. I happen to be a part of that as well. And then the student services team, like I said before, they're a great resource. If you have questions or concerns that the school team isn't addressing to your satisfaction and you just need a little bit more support. And I think with that, we're going to go to Q&A. I'm going to stop the share. And does anybody have, I know there's some questions, some things in the chat, but I was probably the black bar things. Yeah, sorry about the black bars. I am apparently not very good at screen sharing and couldn't figure out how to get those to go away. Does anybody have any other questions they want to, or anything they want to add?
I'll add just because there was a thing in the news recently.
Yes.
I was thinking about as you were talking, Sarah, about transition. Um, transition is also for people who don't graduate. Like if you are not able to graduate high school, then transition provides that transition to adult life because you don't have that diploma. And that's just important to be aware of. I don't know the details of the case or the situation at all, but there was just a story in the news. One of the school districts in our area right now is being sued by a family whose kid was passed through and graduated without actually having the learning that she needed because of her disability. And didn't qualify for any kind of transition support because she graduated high school. So it's not, we want our kids to learn. And it's not a kindness to award a graduation certificate without skills.
Thank you, Ananda. That was actually something I was wondering about the other day. Okay, with that, I think I will stop the recording.